in Pushpagiri Institute of Medical Sciences, Tiruvalla. And he is also adjunct professor of neurology, Manipal University, Manipal. And he is a senior consultant neurologist from PRS Hospital, Trivandrum. And he is a professor emeritus, Medical College, Trivandrum. And he is also a former professor and HOD Medical College, Kottayam. He had many publications, more than 30 publications nationally, internationally. He contributed to 15 chapters, and he published a book on the higher neural functions. Sir, we are waiting for your talk, sir.
Thank you, Surya Prabha. I will just share the screen now, once a minute. Is my slides seen?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, okay. So at the outset, I would like to thank Professor Venkatesh Raju and Gram for inviting me to part of this program. So what I am going to show you today is certain medical problems presenting as primarily neurological illness, which neurologists should not miss. These are all case vignettes, most of them having videos, but they are all short cases to drive home certain particular clinical points. This is the story of a 65-year-old diabetic right-handed man. He presented with episodes of visual disturbance in the form of difficulty in seeing on the right side of the visual field, associated with flashes of light. The episodes used to last for less than an hour and repeated itself many times for the last 6 hours prior to seeing me in the OPD. Neural examination showed right homonymous hemianopia and mild right-sided weakness. So what do you think is the likely diagnosis? Is it a recurrent TIA? So it was investigated, brain MRI was normal, brain angio normal. So what will you do now in this patient? Will you start him on antithrombotic drugs? Any other investigation like to do in this patient? His blood sugar is 450 milligram. Had no further episodes after starting 4 pints of normal saline. So the diagnosis is hyperosmolar coma producing recurrent seizures. This is one of the case reports showing hyperglycemic hemianopia, that is hyperosmolar state presenting only as episodic hemianopia. So the only learning point is that hyperosmolar coma is a great mimicker. It can present not only with recurrent focal seizures, as you all know, it can present with paroxysmal behavioral disturbances or even paroxysmal hemianopia or even lasting for even days. I'll go to the next case. This is a 34-year-old female who is presented with episodes of abnormal posturing of both hands, inability to open the jaw, that's trismus, difficulty in articulation, and inability to open her eyes for the last 3 years. The episodes used to last 15 to 20 minutes and may recur 2 to 3 times on certain days. This is the video of the patient. You can see there is a posture of the hand. It remains flexed. Look at her face. She has got puckering of the face, contracts of the posterior. She is unable to open her mouth. As though to open her mouth, she is not able to do that. She has got partial blepharospasm as well. And no, is not able to open the jaw fully, but are able to put out the tongue. This is the posture of the hand she was having, and as I am trying to open it, it goes back to the same position again. This lasts for about half an hour and subsides. And this is the patient on the next day. So what do you think is the likely problem this patient has been having? The clue is that she underwent thyroidectomy 4 years back. So her serum calcium was 4 milligram. Now you know that it's a hypocalcemia producing spasms. The point, our learning point here is that we have been taught that produce carpopedal spasms, but hypocalcemia can present with dystonic spasms affecting various parts of the body and even trismus, as you can say in this patient. So whenever you get such episodic spasms or a period of time, always consider the possibility of hypercalcemia, especially the history of cataract or any seizure in the past. This is a 40-year-old man. He came with his history of jerking of the right hand whenever he puts an object on the table for the last 4 months. He felt mild imbalance while standing, not present while walking. No other complaints. This is a Tamil patient, so I think you may be able to understand his language. What he's trying to say is that whenever he writes with a pen, the hand will jerk like that.
இப்படி நான் எம்னு போடுற போது ஏ போடுற கை வரல பட் அந்த பென் வந்து அப்படி மேல
It goes up like that. That is one.
மேலவே மேல இழுத்து
Secondly, when you want to put a cup on the table,
தண்ணிய வைக்கவும் பொழுது
when he puts that,
வச்சிட்டோம் நான் நினைக்கிறது கை எடுக்கிறேன் ஆனா
even before his cup reaches the table, it gets tilted off because the hand gets deviated.
சும்மா ஒரு
He's putting a hand back like that,
ட்ரெஸ்ல கை
it gets tipped off from his
கூட
hand.
ஒரு 5 நிமிஷம் வைக்க முடியாது அப்படியே கையில இருந்து தாங்க முடியும் கீழே விழுந்து கை பேனா
That's the story. In examination, I will. He has got motor power was normal, detail were all absent. He has got normal joint position sense, normal vibration. I'll skip all these things. And he has got mild pseudoathetosis of the hand while closing the eyes, but not very gross. Yes, no gross finger nose incoordination causes physical disability, very mild incoordination, and this is the position of the no mild tremulousness movement of the hand. Nothing else, that's all. So in summary, Kaila's normal, motor system all normal, except that the detail were all absent, sensations all normal, pseudoathetosis upper limbs, rhombus that is mildly positive, and gait is normal. So what do you think is the cause of his dropping of the arms from the hand? What is the problem with him? So we did a conduction study. We showed decrease in the CMAP amplitude from both peroneal nerves. Sensory potentials were not elicitable from the lower limb. So NCV showed sensory motor peripheropathy, predominantly sensory, questionable motor involvement. So in fact, he came for surgery, was seen by another hospital. They took an MRI of the cervical spine. They found some disc collapse, so advised surgery and came for a second opinion. So anything else you need now at this point of time? Do you advocate surgery? Obviously, this particular small disc cannot explain the problem. He has got a peripheral nerve disease and duplex are absent. So this peripheral smear showed mild macrocytic anemia. Vitamin B12 was normal. Now, what do you want now at this point of time? So obviously, we consider the possibility of B12 deficiency strongly. So if you look at the MRI, previous MRI brought by the patient, see you can find the hyperintensity in the posterior aspect of the cord in the posterior column. So we took another good MRI with axial sections where you can make out the classical rabbit ear appearance of the subacute combined degeneration. You can make out that thing. This is well clearly seen here. And the homocysteine, even the B12 was normal, homocysteine was markedly elevated. So the learning point here I would like to mention is that subacute combined degeneration can present symptoms confined to the upper limb, need not be in the lower limb, because of the main affection of the tractus cuneatus. It can present with sensory ataxia and proprioceptive loss without much affection of the perceptual joint position sense. Our JPA sensation vibration may be normal. Still, the patient can have proprioceptive input loss to the cerebellum because the fibers are different. And vitamin B12 may be missed if you do only serum vitamin B12 levels. Now, I go to another interesting patient, which I was not able to make the diagnosis initially. Anything?
అయిపోయిందిరా నేను కలిపేస్తాను మాట్లాడు.
Okay. A 60-year-old chronic diabetic.
వెళ్ళిపోయావా పోనీ?
CKD patient on regular dialysis for the last 2 years presented with severe pain in the neck, waking from sleep for the last 3 days. No other complaint. Examination only finding is not allow me to touch his, move his neck, so severely painful, but otherwise his sinus is normal. So what do you want to know? I thought some problem with the abscess or some fracture or what. I did not know what it was. Some cervical spine pathology was thought of and took an MRI. MRI showed the cervical spine is essentially normal except for spondylotic changes. Cord was normal, but he had a prevertebral fluid reduction. And this is the fluid reduction. You can see the MRI. Again, you can see that in the picture. And ESR was 120, total count 16,000 with predominant polymorphs, and CRP was 45. The concern was that he was having a prevertebral effusion, probably due to some pyogenic abscess there. So the nephrologist wanted to do an aspiration because she said she had another patient who could not be salvaged because he delayed the surgery. So in fact, she was posted for doing surgery on the next day. But the radiologist on that night called me and said, "Don't do the surgery now. I want a CT to be done in this patient." Okay, then he told me some reason. The CT was done. This is a CT scan of the cervical spine. I don't know whether you can make out some abnormality, whatever it is, you can make out the abscess here or the production here. But there is some other finding which we'll tell later on. So on his advice, he said put anti-inflammatory drugs. So I put him on short course of steroid, even though he was a diabetic and CKD patient. And remind you, everything subsided in the next day, and by third day, everything is disappeared. No pain at all. This is the CT before and this is CT after. But look at the oropharyngeal space. It's so much shrinked in the before the treatment. After 3 days, the space has become normal. Now, this is MRI was done after week. This is the effusion previously, and no effusion after 3 days of treatment, after 1 week of treatment. Now, what was the CT scan which made the radiologist defer aspiration? In fact, I did not know. He pointed out that you can make out some calcification there just below the anterior arch of Achilles. That's actually what is called longus colli tendinitis calcification. This is again, you can make out that small thing there. So this is longus colli calcific tendinitis with reactive effusion. This entity is a rare condition that causes severe neck pain. The clinical presentation is commonly mistaken for other life-threatening conditions like neck abscess, trauma, herniation, and disc herniation and neoplasm. The symptoms include odonophagia, stiffness, neck pain, mild fever, and limitation of cervical motion, and there is associated with the non-separated retropharyngeal effusion. You can have elevated ESR and CRP and white cell count in such conditions. What is thought to be due to arise from a non-infectious inflammatory response of the tendons and longus colli muscles, secondary to deposition of amorphous calcium hydroxyapatite crystal at the anterior D1 and C1 C2 displays. And this is from the literature. In fact, this is a well-known entity. If you go to the literature, I did not know that. And beware of, so the learning point is that beware of this very benign condition mimicking a very serious problem. And always do CT cervical spine in such cases because calcification can be missed in the MRI. But our radiologist picked up finding in the MRI which we were not able to pick up this calcification in the MRI. I'll put another case, a 19-year-old nursing student presenting with inability to lift both hands of 2 months duration, difficulty in fine movements, 2 months duration. There was no pain, no sensory symptoms. The complaints of subacute in onset and gradually progressive. And she was recently dated to thyrotoxicosis and used neomycosol for 1 month. No preceding fever, vaccination, no rashes, no significant past history. Examination, there was cranials are normal, marked weakness in the distribution of radial and median nerve bilaterally, asymmetrical more on the right side. Deep ripples were normal, no sensory deficit, first annual examination normal. This is the position of the hand in this late girl. Bilateral to stop, and also is not able to move. Other small muscles are also in fact weak. So I thought it could be multiple motor neuropathy of axonal variant, bilateral upper limb, choreovasculatic neuropathy. This was my professional diagnosis which I considered at that time. And anticonception was thought of, but very unlikely because the muscle weakness was in the distribution of the nerve, even though sensations were spared. So we did, and CV showed again the same affection of the median and radial nerve. vascularity profile was normal, CSF was normal, other metabolic profile, your routine things are all normal. So I thought after investigation, multifocal motor axon neuropathy, non-systemic vasculitis, these are two possibilities. I put the patient IVAG and continued to neomarcosol, which she had been receiving. And patient was discharged. After 1 month, she presented again, now with pain of both lower leg, the knee, and right foot drop. But there was no worsening of the upper limb weakness. No other positive history. Examination now showed he has got weakness of the dorsiflex of the angle and peroneal on the right side. Now the patient had sensory loss on the peroneal distribution. In repeat NCB showed affection of common peroneal nerve and both tibial nerves. SNAP was absent now in the sural nerve. Now it has become sensory motor perineuropathy. So I thought now the diagnosis I changed to axonal variant of sensory motor neuropathy. I was still not able to find out the etiology. So this time I went, since the patient recurrence, put on methylprednisolone and started on carbamazepine, amitriptyline for her waning pain. After 3 days of starting treatment, she developed severe abdominal pain and recurrent vomiting. Thought she was having steroid-induced gastritis. Start on H2 blockers, but however the pain and vomiting increased. So gastro opinion was taken. He did an OGD and USC abdomen, which is normal. Next day, patient became drowsy, had a tachycardia, persisting pain and vomiting, and low serum sodium. And that is the time something clicked in our brain. Till that time, we were fooling around. So a diagnostic test was performed, and the urine showed the high chloride urine. Now you know what the diagnosis. It's got acute intermittent porphyria, presenting as bilateral pure motor upper limb radial nerve palsy. Subsequent things I will skip it because patient improved with subsequent hematine, which I could manage. So the learning point is that consider porphyria when patient presents pure motor neuropathy and the affection may be confined to the upper limbs as per the classical teaching of bathing suits, sensory loss and all, which may not be present. Always keep this possibility in mind. In fact, her condition was worsened by introduction of carbamazepine, amitriptyline, etc. But another case, a 54-year-old man came with progressive walking difficulty for 1.5 years time, in the form of dragging of feet, buckling of right knee followed by the left knee, and needed support for walking for the last 1 month. He had numbers of both feet initially, which improved in 2 weeks' time. No bowel or bladder complaints. So progressive myelopathy with sensory impairment in the distal part. Examination experts spasticity of both the lower limbs. Power of the upper limbs are normal, lower limb all great for power. Detailed brisk both in the upper and lower limb. Abdominal fluids are absent. Pandas are ongoing bilaterally. Sensation decreased posterior column below the knee. Now this is only a very short video showing that the reflexes are brisk even in the upper limb. Okay, meta side. But because lower limb is brisk, whenever tapping the lower limb, the limb goes into flexor spasms. Because of the spasm. He went for a long time. Then the plantar was upgoing. And see the way the patient was walking with a spastic gait. So naturally, it's got a myelopathy with flexor spasms. Usually, flexor spasms occur in compressive myelopathy that have been taught from very beginning. It's a sign of compressive myelopathy. So took an MRI of the cervical spine as well as the thoracic spine. Cervical spine was essentially normal. Dorsal spine, there is no compression at all. On the other hand, what we found out, the thoracic cord is mainly atrophied. You can atrophy the cord. So it's non-compressive myelopathy, degenerative myelopathy does hardly ever produce flexor spasms. So I thought the patient needs investigation. So your ESR was 72, CSF was normal, protein 34, TC3 cells sure 110. Now, what will you do now? What's the likely diagnosis? So we done CSF, MRI and all. nothing contributory, but something mimicking a compressive myelopathy, but MRI showed atrophy. The CSF showed VDR was positive and FTAB is positive. Serious cases spinal syphilis presenting masquerading as a compressive myelopathy. So I'll skip all these things. So the learning point here is that consider infective causes, even the so-called clinically mimicking non-compressive myelopathies of chronic duration with normal MRI, or normal in the sense that no compression MRI. And flexus chiasm can occur in non-compressive myelopathies, need not always suggest a compressive myelopathy. Now, this another case, I got 10 more minutes. So, this elderly diabetic man is admitted with repeated jerky involuntary movements of the left upper and lower limb for 3 days. But these movements used to occur only whenever he attempts to move the limb, not perseveral rest. This is the involuntary movement. This is something like repeated stereotyped jerky movements of the left upper limb. But he tried to elevate that these movements become manifest. This become repeated and more profound. But when it's asked to keep the hand side without moving it, it's I want to touch my finger, it's not able to touch my finger because of the repeated jerky movements. But when he keeps it on the table without moving, there is no involuntary movement. When he's again trying to attempt to touch my finger, it recurs again. He's again touch again, the jerky movements start appearing. So it's some kind of an intention or movement or kinesio any type of recurrent focal seizures. Now, this is the CT scan. Now you know what the likely diagnosis is. It's a typical finding in hyperosmolar coma. His RBS 450 and he's improved everything with saline infusion. So the point I want to try, this almost all we have seen, but this action precipitated recurrent focal motor seizures said to be very characteristic finding in diabetic hyperosmolar state differentiate from other causes. Now, this another common problem, elderly gentleman was admitted with extreme tiredness and vomiting for the last 2 weeks. He was noticed at this abnormal movement. Look at his face and the he has got jerky movements of the face bilaterally and dropping of the head. See this kind of a movement. But he's fully conscious during these episodes. See these moments. And also the limb movement also. This used to recur frequently, and ask him to lift up his hand. You can see both negative and positive myoclonus. Whenever you get positive negative myoclonus, all of you know what to suspect. Think of metabolic encephalopathy. In fact, he had CKD, which will become totally under control with one dialysis. So the learning point is that metabolic encephalopathy can produce severe positive negative myoclonus, even drop attacks. Sometimes negative myoclonus, the lower limb can produce drop attack and make the patient make fall. And they can also produce facial asterexis, which you can see here, the facial myoclonus, which is sometimes called as facial asterexis, which may be confused with automatisms of complex partial seizure. On the other, if I happen to see these facial movements and altered sensorium, what I consider most likely complex partial seizure. Now, this 50-year-old lady presented severe burning pain of both legs, apprehension, palpitation, restlessness, and twitching of both legs for the last 2 weeks duration. On examination, she had features of peripheral neuropathy. Both knee and ankle jacks were absent, distal loss of sensation of both feet. And you can see what the patient was having. Look at the muscle. It's got something like a continuous wriggling movements in the calf, mimicking like a bag of worms, which you all know it was a myochemic-like movement in the calf. And these myochemic movements are also seen in the thigh and also on the opposite leg. So it's a diffuse process. You can make out that on the thigh also. Okay. So she had myoclonus in the calf muscles, peripheral neuropathy, and autonomic nervous system in infection in the form of agitation, sweating, etc. anxiety. So the possibility thought was Morgan syndrome due to Caspar-2 antibody. The antibody was negative. Okay, now what do you think? You want a clue? She had consumed Siddha medicine for 3 months prior to presentation. And the Siddha medicine was estimated for heavy metals and very high heavy content of mercury was detected. It is a case of mercury poisoning. So I have seen persons with mercury poisoning, I think more so from Tamil Nadu, where Dr. Murugan from Salem and Dr. Uh, Professor in neurology from Chennai has presented series of cases of this kind of Siddha medicine or Ayurvedic preparation induced when peripheral neuropathy and autoimmune nerve system with Caspar-2 antibody positive. So positive Caspar-2 does not make you think that it's always autonomic and autoimmune disease. It also gives the possibility of toxic neuropathies. I think I'll finish the two or last one more case or just two short cases. This is a case of 65-year-old, it's not a short case anyway, 65-year-old male. On 2nd April 2019, he noticed difficulty in manipulating food in his mouth and dysarthria, probably 10th nerve palsy. 12th nerve palsy and was put on treatment and the combined improved. 4th May, that is 1 month later, she developed drooping of the right eyelid, diplopia and decreased appetite. The patient was noticed to have decreased interest in routine activities, was complaining of extreme tiredness and needed support for one person to walk. On 8th May, patient noticed to have weakness of left upper limb, worsening in difficulty in walking, and got admitted to the prison hospital. So I think it's just show you that he had got right turned was the history, but examination we found he has got a left sixth nerve palsy off like a panic testing. Left eye is not moving out to bed. And motor system showed his facility of both upper limb, but more so on the left side, asymmetrically weak. Scotoparesis more on the left side. I'll skip the video part of it.
The symposium
And the
about to
reflexes were
start, sir.
bilaterally brisk.
Sir, the next symposium is about to start, sir. Sir,
And both plantas were upgoing. Okay, so this is the story. What I thought initially, so example is drowsy, pupil is normal, left system palsy, like a panic testing, bilateral facility upper and lower limb with upgoing plantar more on the left side. And there was no next signal. So what initially thought was my was some chronic meningitis because he had some multiple tail nerve involvement which improved and then went into altered sensorium with bilateral pyramidal signs. So some randomatous meningitis with hydrocephalus was clear. That was the thing I had in mind.
video on to sensor.
Then you may ask why the tail nerves probably I thought might have due to the steroid the patient must have received from Dr. Hospital.
Japan, sir.
So they went on the investigations in which it showed 41,000 cells and 48% were eosinophils and ESR was 60. Serum protein, serum creatinine, etc. normal. Pienga was positive. Cienga was borderline positive. Peripheral smear showed severe eosinophilia. Then I was wondering how to explain the neurological deficit with blood picture. This is the MRI showed from multiple watershed infarct in the MCA, ACA, PCA territories, longitudinal watershed infarct. So that can explain a deficit, remitting and disease, some deficits improved and then progressive can altered something can explain. This is the prior sequence, but how to explain the peripheral picture? Eosinophilia. So the MR angiogram is normal, even from the carotid artery territory versus the screen is normal because the watershed infarct we thought to be carotid stenosis, which is the one commonly described. So what is the cause? Is there a microscopic polyangiitis? But there was no history of asthma in this patient. Echocardiogram was taken to find out the cardiac source of embolism, and there was no evidence of SPE. And chest X-ray showed this mass. And Biopsy from the chest tumor showed lymphoma. Then this is what is seen here. This is hypereosinophilic syndrome can present with Watchford. This I am knowing for the first time. Are a group of disorders characterized by persistent hypereosinophilia, not due to parasitic infections, allergies, disease, etc. It can produce neurological manifestations in the form of peripheral neuropathy, encephalopathy, and thromboembolic infarction. This is another case report, bilateral water-treaty infarct in non-hemodynamic significant stenosis due to hypereosinophilic syndrome. This is the same patient with the literature showing the water-treaty.
Sir, we are
So
running
water
short.
infarct had been associated with hypereosinophilia in rare case reports. The proposed mechanisms are distant microemboli from the endocardial fibrosis and local serovascular thrombosis. So this is the case. I will end my talk with the last very short case. This boy had presented with resistant cough for last 1 week, always coughing. Went to physicians many times. Pulmonologist, he did pulmonary function test. This is the cough is had.
Last slide.
Continuously coughing. Okay, he coughs up to everything on the next day. So what trick is this is due to, in fact, it's called a tick disorder producing, it's a vocal tick manifesting as a recurrent cough. I have seen 3 such cases. Patient has got a resistant cough responding to risperidone as a cough is as tick disorder, which is common in children. I think I have exactly on my time. I know. Thank you for your patient listening. Any questions I would like to I can take.
Sir, as we have no running short of time, sir, we cannot take any questions, sir,
Okay.
because the Dr. Bal Parmeshwara symposium is about to start.
It's a wonderful illustrations you are showing, sir, which is very much enlightening to all of us. And, with all these, shall we conclude, sir?
Okay. Thank you for your listening.
So thank you very much, sir.
Yeah.
Thank you very much
Thank you.
for
Thank you.
the patient hearing.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I'll stop the show.